From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya, it's episode 76, and we are talking about science fiction film iamlegend.
You sure are, mate.
I am the legend. Came out in 2007. So in this episode, we're going to reveal what we thought about the film, the ins and outs of narrative and film language, plus a nice deep dive into a specific piece of science that the filmmakers are proposing. iamlegend was directed by Francis Lawrence, based on a screenplay by Mark Protazevich and Akira Goldsman. It did actually have quite a few incarnations from the 70s from this original novel, iamlegend, by Richard Matheson. The Warner Brothers bought the rights way back in the 50s, made Omega Man with Charlton Heston, which was on our last episode. So that's a version of this film. It had a whole bunch of screenwriters and different points in time that it had the green light, but never got off the ground until this version with, of course, the one and only Will Smith playing the lead.
Billy Smith. Yeah, so turn back now. This is your spoiler warning. Warning. And then watch the film and then come back and listen to us as we talk about what's exciting.
Now, warning. A virus spreads across the globe from a vaccine.
Oh, this
sounds familiar. No, we're not talking about COVID. iamlegend is basically set years after this vaccine outbreak scenario hits the worldwide population, devastating the human population, and we focus in on one doctor who remains at the epicenter, which is New York, to try to cure the disease whilst avoiding being hunted by the remaining infected.
The remaining infected.
Are they remaining vaccinated?
What I love about the premise here, though, is if you're trying to think of all of these, say, zombie movies and so forth, or just movies where a disease wipes out everyone, because we know that diseases don't do that so far.
Yeah.
I guess if you've got the very right combination, but it's basically, no, it's probably not going to happen. So how do you do it? How do you come up with the premise of a movie where everyone suddenly starts turning into zombies or vampires or dies or whatever the case may be? And I love this one because the idea is that they came up with this injection, a cure for cancer, like just all cancer.
Yeah.
And so you got to think, okay, yeah, so voluntarily, people would be voluntarily going, yeah, I want to be immune to all cancer. And particularly because you think cancer hits like 1 in 5 people. You got to think that most families around the world have at some point had to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect that would then just introduce, I can't remember what the stats, Robert Neville, he mentions the stats of how many people got turned and then how many people were left alive and how many people were immune and then all got killed.
Yeah.
But it is a really good way of very, very quickly deploying and spreading the monster causing thing around the world. Like, it's plausible.
Yeah.
Because, in a few months you could roll this out and, inoculate millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people around the world because everyone's thinking, oh, this is going to save me from all disease.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
You don't think there would be any anti-vaxxers?
And then you turn... Well, he said that there was some percentage of people...
I think it was 500 million
500 million people got rolled out.
It's a decent...
So there would be people, for example, go, well, I'm not that concerned.
Yeah, of course.
Me personally, for example, I'm one of the lucky people where cancer is not something that has been in my family. I've got grandparents living to their 90s and dying of boredom, which is what I think my wife's going to go that way too. So I better pick up my game a bit. But I love that concept.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I will say straight away is this film does that, and you could call it a fantasy, or it brings up that imagination of like the last man on earth idea, or what if you were the last person alive? And many zombie films touch on that, but this film takes it right to that, that extremity. And on top of that, I know everyone was pretty excited when this was actually announced and greenlit, and, Will Smith and, big production value, big budget. Hollywood's taken on a zombie film, basically. And they really did deliver on many factors, and we'll come to that throughout this episode. So it does deliver on that fantasy of what would it be like to be the last person alive. So what was your number one takeaway?
My number one takeaway is that if you imagine a car driving down the road really fast with a very bad man driving it, and then what if you could replace the bad man with a police officer?
Yeah.
That'd be a very different situation, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Silence. Crickets. My number one takeaway is that car analogies are often poorly used.
They are.
And I remember watching that and waiting for the point where you sort of go, okay, so you got a really fast car driving the road, and apparently a bad man is driving it. He's a good driver. He's just a very bad man. Actually, not a man at all. It's a small girl.
Yeah.
Terrible man.
Yeah.
Really excellent small girl, but terrible man. And then replace him with a police officer, and then you're waiting for, this is...
It's totally different now, Surrey.
You've still got a car speeding out of control.
Dangerous.
Okay. But anyway, it was a car analogy because everyone loves a car analogy.
I do.
Car analogies are like if you imagine a car... anyway. That's it. Car analogies everywhere. That's how you know it's a science fiction film as well.
Yeah.
Because if this was fantasy, they wouldn't bother with a car analogy.
No, they wouldn't bother with any analogies, would they?
No.
There's a couple of analogies in this. There's the Bob Marley one at the end as well. He explains that analogy of him being shot, and then, the bad people will keep making this world worse, and so I need to keep showing up every day too,
Yeah.
So there's a couple of analogies in this, plus a motive. That reoccurring sort of image is used in this film as well, so we'll come to that in a moment as well.
Oh, yeah. So was this a hope, a warning, or an experiment?
I think it's a pure experiment, this one, because I think it is that question, like, what if you were the last person alive? What if this vaccine rolled out and actually turned half the population into these weird mutant creatures, zombie-like vampires, whatever they were, and then they killed the other half, or those that were remaining, and what would that be like? So to me, it's a real pure question. Also, when you get to the crux of this film, it's kind of, if you are the last person alive, it's very lonely. And then, so what does loneliness do to humans? Humans aren't really meant to be alone, although it does sound like a lovely dream of mine.
To be alone.
We'd like to be alone, especially if you had little children for many years. You probably wouldn't mind going to the cabin in the woods. But yeah, so that concept of, it's a what if film to me. So I saw this as a real experiment, and then playing out that experiment. And I think it goes to further into that than into the detail, because he is the scientist. He's still experimenting. If that was me, I wouldn't be bloody experimenting on these creatures or these rats. I don't think I would. You'd probably be looking at survival, but then again, maybe you would, because if you're the last person, he was well stocked with food and supplies, and he was a talented soldier, so he knew how to survive, didn't he? Sort of thing. It was quite often in zombie films or stories, Walking Dead, the big TV show. A lot of the time, those people are not survivalists. It was almost like this character was automatically a survivalist, Ben Grills.
Yeah.
And then, and a scientist as well. So he's kind of like, Well, he's sort of bored, isn't he? He's bored with living in the apocalypse.
What else are you going to do?
What else are you going to do? Might as well experiment and try to find the cure.
Might as well.
And he explains to us as well that he kind of can't get infected, so he's
Well, it's interesting you say experiment
immune.
because I was heading down the road of warning because in my mind, a classic science fiction warning one is where it's like, we tried to play God and now we're getting our upcomings. And right at the very start in the opening sequence where the woman gives a bad car analogy, which kind of goes nowhere, is she says, well, we took what nature made and then we, improved it to make it work for us.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get a scientist in one of these science fiction movies say, we took what nature did and then we fucked with it, it's just like, that's a warning movie because now it's going to fail.
Yeah.
We took dinosaurs and we improved them. How could that go wrong?
It's very true.
It's all, but I can see, and you could also even argue a little bit on the hope side, but the disaster was of our own making.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I do. You make a really good point. If you're out there and you think that it's experiment or you think it's warning, then let us know. I suppose to me also where the experiment comes in is that, like the creatures sort of turn out to be more human than Will Smith.
Yes.
Like it sort of is as the film goes along. He is actually the one that is the maniac, really, and terrorizing. And I think that was the monsters.
The main theme of the novel, as well,
yeah.
was like he was legend not because of legendary to the survivors, but he was legend as in he was the monster that goes bump in the day. For these critters that come out at night. They had this person hunting them because he had like a whole wall of photographs of failed experiments.
That's right, like a serial killer,
and you can imagine. These monsters would just be like, well, we just go in at daytime and have our little rest.
Yeah.
And then some of our friends just go missing.
That's right.
And we hear stories of there's like someone who goes around during the daytime.
Yeah.
And breaks into places and kills us. You think, okay, so he's kind of the monster in this case.
So to me, that's where that experiment kicks in.
Yeah, I can see that. But speaking of experiments, I would like to see the film, and I don't know if it's been done. There's probably I think there might be a Black Mirror that's kind of this way, but where the person is fighting the monsters, but of course it's all a perception thing. And that when everyone around you is a monster, you've got to reevaluate. So the whole thing's like if everyone else in the world is stupid, that's where you got to stop and reassess and go, hold on. How can everyone be stupid except for me?
Yeah.
It sounds suspiciously like I might be the one with the problem. Everyone else in the world is crazy except me. Everyone's a monster but me. Yeah, I know. And it'd be one of those same but difference going on there.
That's definitely right. So anyway, let us know. Surrey and I kind of disagreeing on that one tonight. So let us know what you think. Is it a hope, warning, or experiment?
So, Mark, you said hiding in a cabin in the woods. Any particular time where that has been a strong desire? And at that time, what would you want to do while you're hiding out? I don't know. It could be an abandoned city or the proverbial cabin in the woods, lunar-based space station. I don't know what it is.
I guess part of the fantasy which is explored in this film is... And he does it in this film, as in going to the DVD store and checking out the movies one by one. And so it's that you have that, you walk into a department store and you're the only one in there. And you walked into, like a supermarket and you could just take stuff off the shelf. That's part of the fantasy. I guess that then on a deeper level, I think the metaphor there is isolation, being on your own, the cabin in the woods sort of thing. And I think also, I don't know, I suppose in this society, in a Western society like Australia, and I presume America, Europe, are quite similar standard of living. We are, now we have water come to our front door or taps inside our house, gas, heating, air conditioning. We hop into vehicles that take you from A to B. So the fantasy there, I suppose, is maybe getting a little bit back to survival off the land, growing your own food, working the soil, learning about the seasons, being a bit more in touch with nature. I think there is a fantasy there. I don't know if in reality, you do all that work and then the crop fails and pests eat everything and you've got no food at the end of the day.
There'd be times where you'd kind of be missing that
like
automation.
You create that cheese cave or your own beer and it blows up on you or whatever, or the cheese is all just mouldy and gross. It hasn't worked.
The wrong mould.
The wrong mould, the wrong mould, not the good cheese mould. And so, the fantasy's there, but of course it might not roll out that way. I think, as I said, in this world, it's interesting wouldn't it be interesting to walk around New York City and you're the only person? And I don't think I'd really want those creepy monsters at nighttime, but that would be weird, wouldn't it? Like he's at the start of this film straight away, he's like hunting a deer in a muscle car, roaring through the streets. He doesn't have to worry about hitting a pedestrian. He doesn't have to worry about, you know what I mean? Like there's a fantasy there, isn't there?
There would be a certain amount of just, even here in Mandurah, there's a few nice big long straight roads, and every now and then you hear someone hooning down there at some ridiculous hour.
Someone's living their fantasy.
You're kind of hoping you don't hear them screech your tires in a crash because, it wouldn't go down well.
I think that's it, isn't it?
If you're the only one there.
Yeah. You can do 180 kilometres an hour and...
Sun's out, looking nice. Why not?
In your muscle car, and why the hell not? And this is what he does in this film as well. Like, there's a couple of fantasy moments. The muscle car through the city, the DVD store, the playing golf off the top of that hangar...
Aircraft carrier thing, yeah.
Aircraft carrier, but he's not just on the carrier, he's also on top of the plane wing. Why not?
Yeah, fishing in that indoor
museum.
thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how he managed to keep fish alive in there, but they die pretty easily. Yeah. Well, let's talk then about, of course, our favourite topic lately is the film festival. We have penciled in a couple speakers.
We have.
We will announce them when we have locked them in, and our next sort of speaker. It's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
These are accomplished individuals of the Australian persuasion who have something worthwhile to tell us and talk to us about.
So our goal is to have kind of like writers, filmmakers, science or science fiction experts deliver workshops and give opportunity for the audience to kind of ask them questions. So we're kind of branching off into those key aspects of the festival. We've locked in a couple of people. It's pretty exciting. Penciled in.
We've got to get this contract signed.
Yes, we do.
And let them tell us when we're allowed to start announcing names and producing, promo material for that. Yeah. So that's good. And the tickets are going to be going on sale imminently. Yeah.
So we've been given a bit of a draft preview from Manpack, the Mandurah Performing Arts Centre, where the festival will be held, and I think they're going to be selling the tickets any day now. So by the time you're listening to this episode, you may be able to buy a ticket.
Is that
or two?
Manpack.com.au?
Ooh.
MANPAC.
I think if you Google Manpack, you'll be good.
Mandurah Performing Arts. No, it can't be Mandurah Performing Arts. Anyway, get yourself to Manpack and check it out when you hear us talking about this now, because you probably will find us getting about.
Well, Google Manpack, or if you do head to things like Spacebrains, there'll be all the links there. So
you won't be able to dodge it.
No.
The episode after this one will probably tell you the full details.
Yes.
When they're up. Okay, so let's get on to plots.
Yes. So I suppose a few details about the film before we get into the actual specifics of the plot. We mentioned Francis Lawrence directed this screenplay. Now, we probably should touch on this. Warner Brothers owned this film outright, the good old option. If you don't know what an option is, if you're a writer, a way of actually making money is a film studio optioning you. Now, if you're not a big published author, you might not get optioned much. But
if it's Stephen King, you might get optioned a lot.
Yeah, as soon as Stephen King puts out his latest book, someone's probably optioning. And what that means is they kind of then have the option to turn that into maybe a film or a TV show. And there's probably contracts, like we mentioned before, on all sorts of levels. Stephen King, there might be a bit of a bidding war.
And here's the thing about Stephen King, he has got a large body of work that he has published at various times
Yeah.
in various medium, that he has got the options for sale for $1. And his idea being, so you'll actually find a lot of independent films or small budget films and so forth based on a Stephen King story, because you can actually go along, and I haven't gone to find if there's any available, but he does this on purpose because he wants people to be able to use his name to basically sell an adaptation of his film, because in one thing, he's a creator, he wants people to be creative too. It also spreads his name.
That's right.
So what a win-win situation that is.
That's it. So Warner Brothers tried to get this. They did make The Omega Man with Charlton Heston. We probably should look at that film in
Probably
the future.
should do.
We'd just done Soil and Green with Charlton Heston. That was a bit of a different version of I Am Legend, the novel. And then especially in the 90s, it ramped up. Warner Brothers really wanted to make it. There was a really long period of time that Ridley Scott was attached to this, and the key actor was going to be Arnie.
Oh,
Right?
Oh, yes.
And we're heading somewhere there in the mid-90s. Ridley Scott has a couple of bad movies come out that don't do too well at the box office.
Say it's not true.
Warner Brothers are a little bit iffy. Arnie has a couple of movies that bomb at the box office.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to about 1998, the Warner Brothers really cool on the whole thing.
So Arnie's going to politics too. So.
Yeah. So, he was there was a
pulling
period of time he's pulling out. And then there's a couple other years there where changed directors, changed script writers. It went back to Mark again. He'd written a version in the early 90s, went back to him again. And good old Nicolas Cage was pulled into the ring to play the lead here.
He's probably been pulled into the ring to play the lead on every movie.
Every movie ever, so his name was thrown around. And I think there was a couple other names in there as well that you can Google and see.
If I make a movie, I'm going to call Nicolas Cage.
Arnie actually came back on and was a producer and got Will Smith on board. So he sold the idea to Will Smith to be the lead, and Arnie was to produce. After that, Arnie actually pulled out. So it's funny. So he pulled Will Smith into the project, and then he left the project. So it's and it's actually even more complicated than what I'm saying there. So go online, you can really check out. It's one of these films that was like going to get made, not getting made, not getting made. Like it just went up and down. The old green light, not green light, red light, orange light, green light.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, it's a good base material.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking at it going, that would make a good film.
It's a good
I can
film,
see there's a good film here.
Yeah.
But how and who and when and what's the exact way we're going to do it?
The city they kept setting it in changed as well in every script. So it was like originally LA and then San Francisco, kept changing Chicago, and like just kept swapping all around. It was actually Francis, the director, that was like, no, it has to be New York. And he took that inspiration from 28 Days Later when he saw that and he saw London. He was like, we have to put this movie in New York. And the studio wasn't that happy about that because it's not easy to shut down New York.
No.
And Will Smith even said that he had the most surliest bystanders and spectators because they did shut down parts of New York for different periods of time, and people were not happy as they are in New York.
They just have to wait till New York goes to sleep. Oh, hold on, there's the problem.
Yeah, I know. And also the famous bridge scene, which will come across throughout the plot here, a lot of people talk about because there's a big bridge scene, and it ended up costing about $5 million, this scene alone. It's pretty spectacular in the film. It comes up 3 or 4 times in the flashbacks. They blow apart the Brooklyn Bridge, and they didn't really do that. That would have cost a lot more. But, the sort of size of the scene, the cast, the crew, they had to shut down a part of New York every night for 5 nights in a row. There was some sort of thing like they had to get permission from 13 different government agencies to do that scene, and it just was like cost a lot of money and a lot of bribery, a lot of boozy lunches.
CG,
yeah, so that's sort of an interesting little side of it. So Akira Goldsman and Mark Probovich, I think it was his script originally. Akira's come along. She was the one that was brought in with Will Smith at that period of time. Interesting enough, there is going to be a prequel. They've just announced it. Did you hear about this?
Number 2, a sequel I have heard on and off.
Yeah.
Ever since number 1 came out.
Well, they did after this film came out, Francis was like, yeah, there's going to be a sequel, prequel. And I think about 4 years later, he was like, yeah, it's happening. And then 2012, he's like, no, it's not happening anymore. Or for him, it wasn't happening. Yeah. And Will Smith's not keen on sequels apart from Bad Boys. And he didn't really want to get involved. But this year it is, and it literally, like, we picked this movie a couple of weeks ago, and it's like there's been an announcement, and Akira and Will, and there's another big Hollywood producer, he's keen, and so it looks like it's going to happen. Yeah, and it's probably most likely going to be a prequel, as in Will Smith let leak yesterday. I think he's mentioned that it's going to be when he goes, so before they shut New York, and he goes to Washington to try to fight the virus, like come up with the vaccine or the virus, or I don't know, something like that. Like, it's going to be a bit of a different version of it all. Yeah, as the rollout of the vaccine happens or something. And yeah, anyway, we'll see what happens there. Little note, Andrew Lesnie, Oscar award-winning cinematographer, Australian, fortunately has passed away way too young. In his 50s. He died a few years ago, but you might know him, like, he won Oscars for Lord of the Rings. He was also behind Hobbit. Here in Australia, there's like about 40 different films that he was part of as a cinematographer over the years. You would probably recognise some, sorry. And if you're into your Australian films, not necessarily sci-fi, he has made a lot. Babe, obviously, might be something that internationally people recognise. I actually got the privilege to hear him speak about 10 years ago, and he spoke a lot about iamlegend because that was pretty recent when it had come out. And he actually spoke a lot about that $5 million scene and all the effort that went into that in terms of from a camera point of view.
Oh, you wouldn't want to mess up that shot, would you?
So, Will, you're ready? Yeah, all the actors are ready. Andrew, what are you doing? Oh, are we ready?
The lens cap.
Yeah, but he talked a bit about the ridiculousness of working with, like, I think he said in that there was a crew of 250 people, you know, and then the cast, and then Will, and yeah, so it was like this huge scene that they were shooting, and so yeah, it's interesting. He's a great cinematographer, made a lot of good films, obviously won Oscars, so yeah, go check out his credentials. Not necessarily sci-fi in there. I mean, Lord of the Rings, that's probably fantasy, isn't it? I don't think is that.
Yeah, unless you're going to call it an alternate world science fiction, alternate history.
This group of mutants and deformed creatures go on a journey. We can push it sci-fi. Yeah, so go check out his career. So Will Smith, we mentioned, is the main actor, and then really it's just him, isn't it? And the dog.
For the majority of it, yeah.
Yeah, I think her name was Abby. She plays Sam, the German Shepherd dog.
Oh, what a lovely German Shepherd.
Lovely German Shepherd dog. And then we do have Alice Braga plays Anna later. She comes in at the rescue, and Charlie Tahan as Ethan, little kid. Dash Mahak plays the alpha male. Emma Thompson, I mean, she's only at the start of the film on that little bit of TV. It's a tiny role for Emma Thompson. So she's really the evil mastermind in a way, the doctor. And we also had Sally Richardson as Zoe Neville, Robert's wife, and Will brought his little Willow on set, his own daughter, to play the daughter, Marley Neville, and Johanna Namata as the alpha female, and a special little call out to Mike Patton from Faith No More.
Oh, he
does the voices of the Darkseekers.
Interesting note there.
The screams.
Mike Patton also did the zombie screams from the computer game Left 4 Dead.
Well, he's got a voice, doesn't he? He has a hell of a voice. It was a bit of
a hit zombie game, and he did he's credited on the opening credits, zombie voices, Mike Patton.
Yeah.
There you go. Faith No More.
Faith No More. So why not get him involved? So in case. Now, it did end up having, funny enough, some of those earlier scripts they didn't want to make because people weren't doing so well at the box office. They wanted to shave the budget. This ended up having, I mean, to me, like, it's a massive budget, $150 million.
I mean, even by today's standards, that's a fairly decent.
Still a huge chunk. I don't know.
15 years, and that's even more.
Yeah. You know, I mean, Will probably took away 20 himself in his back pocket, but, you know. But it did really well. It returned a box office of $585 million. I'd say that would be pretty good. And there was lots of talk, as Sorry was just saying, about sequel for a long time. People wanted more. So that's a lot of the key details. In Spacebrains, we like to break the narrative down to some of the common elements that you can find from all good story and script writing teachers, people like Campbell, Snyder, and McPhee, Field, where there's a 3-act structure. So basically a beginning, middle, end. What's the first act like, sorry?
The first act is our introduction. It introduces us to the world, the primary characters, probably gives us some of the problems they're facing that we're going to see them overcome during the movie.
You know, the price of petrol for them.
The price of petrol. Well, I mean, Will Smith's driving that muscle car around. That can't be cheap to get around in.
Dog food, that's gone up.
Dog food, yeah. But importantly, we come towards the end of Act 1, we get the catalyst or the inciting incident. It is, the one I like to think about, it's the question that we want to see answered later in this film. And it is usually the thing that, it's the point where, as the audience member, you get that sudden spark in your head, that knowledge, this is what this film is going to be like, this is what it's going to be about.
Yep.
And usually then you have the main character will kind of, confronted with this change, will have to decide to, have a story or not have a story. Yeah. Luckily, he chooses Act 2.
He does. And I will say that you got these 4 breaks technically, the first, the second, the third, 3. You're saying 4? What 4? You said 3. Yeah, it is 3, but when you think about like the beginning and then the total end of the film is basically going onwards, right? The happily ever after. This film hits those 4 beats and those 4 major arc beats. And to go into Act 2 of iamlegend, it's basically time for some fun and games. It's time for, okay, this character, end of the world, the fantasy I was telling you about. Yeah. It's not a happy world, so it's not all fun and games as in happy, happy, la la, but it's fun and games if you were this scientist trying to cure a disease at an epicenter all alone in New York. What would that be like for this character? And that's what happens in the fun and games of this film. We go on that journey with him and things start escalating pretty quick. But for him, during this second act, it is all about what's life like that. And we hit a midpoint in there. Now, a midpoint, gents, is right bang on halfway. And this is what I was just saying, that the act points in this story, if you watch it closely, they're exactly like 30 minutes, 60 minutes, the end of the film. Like they're right on. Every act just is exactly down to that minute. It is so tightly done. So it's really great. Like it's really great. So midpoints can be kind of false victories. Like there's a bit of a win for the main character, or they're just more, the shit gets worse while it gets more serious. But they're a major tone. So if Will's running around New York having a bit of fun and games, right, like doing his thing, the midpoint, like it has to shake that up again, So there is a really big midpoint in this, and it leads to then things becoming worse and worse. And some of those expressions are bad guys close in, all gets lost, like Die Hard. It's obvious the bad guys close in on Bruce Willis. Like as we're heading towards that climax, things get worse for Bruce.
He steps on glass.
Well, he stepped on that earlier, but he then has to like jump out the building, doesn't he? And he has to smash into another floor.
Up and
the bad guys know he's there, so they start doing it. They realise who's his wife. Yeah, they know who his wife is. So things are getting worse and worse. The police downstairs are raising issues, they're not helping the situation. So for Bruce, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And that's why Die Hard is brilliant when you look at this story structure. It will lead to something like an all is lost moment, someone or something dying.
Something goes away.
Yeah, it's very sad. And then when that happens, it's a real dark night. So now Will has a real dark night in this. Like it's the moment that you kind of want to almost kill yourself. Like it's the moment that you're sitting on the side of the road with not a brazoo in your pocket.
No, or you're sitting in an SUV looking at a bunch of monsters and
running them over.
Hit them, as many of them as you can.
Yeah. So that's what that then gets you. Maybe if you pull yourself out of that dark moment, you come up with a new plan. And that new plan is from everything that you've just experienced from the inciting incident. Your world has been turned upside down. And if you're willing to now execute that plan, that takes us into
the finale, Act 3. So Act 3 is a relatively short act. Act 2 is like the majority of the film. Act 3 is the short ending bit. It's often even just like the last 10 minutes of the film. or if it's Lord of the Rings, it could be the last hour and a half of the film, whichever you like. It just has
Of part 3 of,
I think
12 hours.
I think Lord of the Rings had 3 act 3s at the end there, but it's that last bit there where there's some sort of decision is made. It's like, okay, let's do this thing here.
Yeah.
I think that I've grown. I think I've changed. The world is different. Something's going on. There's always a bit of a disappointment, because if it was always just so easy as, let's just leave here and we've got the cure and off we trot.
Yeah.
That's too easy. There always has to be something that the hero, the last impediment, the true test of the hero's courage, that they've got to go, no, this is the true meaning of Christmas. we have to, kill the reindeer. Don't quote me on that. That's probably not the true meaning of Christmas. I was no good at Christmas. And out of that sort of reversal, and you get the victory, the final image then is often where the camera is panning through, the lovely greenery, and it shows the peaceful people sitting around enjoying a picnic, or it's Forrest Gump sitting on a chair, much like at the start of the film, but now he's more knowledgeable.
Well, Bruce, go back to Die Hard, right? Like at the start of Die Hard, he's coming to try to save his marriage. He doesn't have his wife on his side. And then at the end of Die Hard, he's walking out and kissing his wife and hopping in a limo. With his wife,
Okay, I got to.
You know what I mean? So it's the opposite. That's what quite often the end is all about, isn't it?
The same, but the
Donnie
opposite,
Darko, which we did on a previous episode. Go back, watch the film, go back and watch it. Like Donnie Darko as well. Like at the start, he's not really present with his world, and at the end, he is present.
He's fully connected.
He's fully connected, and he knows it, and he sacrifices. So, quite often the start and the end are those bookends. So. Let's get into talk about iamlegend. Now, there's a couple of things I want to say, going back to Andrew Leslie's style of filmmaking, is if you look at the cinematography here, there's a couple of key bits. One is Will Smith, Neville. He is shot really closely. And so what I mean by this is, films are close-ups, but it is tight on Will's face. It is kind of his chin to the top of his forehead. There's chunks and chunks of this film that is Will's beautiful face. Now, he's got a beautiful face.
Heavy breathing through his nostrils.
Lots of,
that sort of tense...
brooding.
Yeah.
It's Will brooding, which I mean, look, we've got to give also credit to Will here. Like, I mean, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like he's hilarious and he's, bad guy, bad boys.
Yeah.
Like it's Will being Will, like he sort of talks himself up. But he downplays that here because he's this scientist that's made this decision to stay and to try to cure. And I think there's there is a sadness there from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. That's kind of his journey, that loneliness theme that comes through. He's kind of never super happy, and so, but I do want to just say the camera work on him is especially close. It's really tight on him. The effect of that, of course, we as an audience don't realise so much, but it makes it a bit claustrophobic, which I think is what it's like for Neville. Like he is a bit enclosed in the city.
It's an interesting point because you could go either way, and movies where you've got people on their own, you do have a lot of pullbacks that show all of that empty space.
Well, they still then do that again, and that's the interesting thing is like then it's. I think there's that juxtaposition that happens, So we're tight on Will's face, and then we have these kind of grandiose, real, like it's like the extreme opposite. Yeah. So there's a good juxtaposition.
I think there's a good example of that in the DVD store. From the point he gets to the DVD store all the way through to leaving with a new DVD. We're right in there, head and shoulders.
You barely actually see the shot. Yeah,
we don't get any wide shots of the shot.
Yeah,
really, we're only seeing over Will's shoulder. Past his neck as he looks around at the mannequins and so forth. It's a great effect, and Will, I think he carries it very well. This is one of his better films, I think.
I think so, definitely.
His intensity.
There's also the motive. Now, a motive in film is a reoccurring image So in this context, it is a butterfly. So did you pick up on the butterfly?
Yeah, look, Dad, a butterfly. And you're like, kid, yeah, there's more important things than a butterfly, but okay, that's a really nice butterfly.
Yeah. So it's mentioned, it's shown, it visually shows up, and then it's symbolically at the end in the glass. So it's kind of unique how they use that motive of a butterfly. So I must admit, was this your first time you've seen this film, or you've seen it before?
It's actually only the second time I've seen it. I remember my wife and I have been wanting to watch it again ever since we saw it the first time.
Yep.
And so it was really nice. I'd forgotten the intensity of this film. Like there's a good 3 or so fairly long, decent scenes.
Yep.
That just absolutely, tighten the thumb screws on you.
Yeah, they do.
And I remember watching it the first time, because the first time you don't know how it's all turning out and so forth. And if we're talking about, say, favourite scenes, one of those is where Sam runs off into the building. And I remember that because you're watching the start, he's driving through the streets in his muscle car, he's powering it up with Sam. We get a literal save the cat moment where the lions capture the deer he's hunting.
Yeah.
And he's going to shoot and he's going, oh, this is dangerous.
Yeah.
And this is the little baby cubs. And he goes,
he saves the cat.
I'm a good guy. I'm going to save those cats. Yeah. But so you sort of you get this idea that he's got all this freedom, but you also know that there's something bad happening because obviously there's no people around. And Sam goes into that building, and the mood changes immediately. There's tension. Like he's no longer just kind of palling around, just sort of taking it easy. And it's just the camera comes right in, and we just get a lot of black with the light. That whole sequence there going through there, I remember was just on the edge. I knew that Will Smith's character wasn't going to die.
Yeah.
Because the whole rest of the movie is going to have to happen, right? Like you wouldn't.
No, we're going to follow Sam, the German Shepherd.
Sam was a dog.
Yeah.
And you can legitimately kill dogs.
You can.
I mean, don't. What I mean is in a story sense.
Narrative, yeah.
In a narrative, you could kill the dog in order to
raise the stakes.
The stakes, increase the tension. And so we knew that the dog was vulnerable.
We did.
It's just like, when you have the 3 friends go in there, one of them's sort of the stoner or something, and they're expendable.
Yes.
And if the writer and the director has done the right job, we don't want them to be. But Sam, puppy, lovely dog.
I know.
That whole scene, it's a relatively long sort of sequence of silence because he hasn't really done any talking except a few things to say to the dog. Yeah. And it's just, it's I remember coming out of it just going, oh, thank God the dog's okay. It's real relief. And then there's other sequences later on where it's the same deal where you go where he's hanging upside down.
Yeah, the hanging upside down.
And where he's even taking his wife and putting her in the helicopter. Yeah. And the sound of the helicopter engine is winding up and winding up. Yeah. And then it cuts off, and it's just these absolutely.
The film actually, you've kind of just explained it really well. Sorry, like the film has quite a few of those jump cuts, so we're seeing stuff, and then it cuts on the actual action to the next bit, and so you as an audience are like, like you don't get the resolution. And again, maybe there's a bit of symbolism in that's the feeling of Neville, like he's in this world that you can never kind of feel resolved,
there's only his perspective there, so we don't
ever see anything else.
We can't see anything else, really.
So anyway, we've talked it through a few times that the basically what the setup of this film, but let's go through some of the things. So the film does open with us of a little old TV screen, and Emma Thompson's playing this doctor. She's explaining that she genetically re-engineered the measles virus to cure cancer. And I think they say something like, how many subjects, how successful is it? And she said, we've had 10,000 human samples or trials and 10,000 successful things. And she kind of gives a smirk. Yeah. And that's a kind of a nice moment. And I think there it cuts from that moment to, we've then got these beautiful drone helicopter shots over an empty New York.
3 years later.
Yeah. And, you know, we're seeing just it's those shots are the emptiness. You know, we're seeing New York. There's no movement. There's no traffic. It's not the hive, the city that never sleeps. No, this city is sleeping.
No, yeah, there's trees, there's grass.
Yeah, and we kind of slowly hone in, and there's a great kind of like muscle car that comes out of nowhere, and it's hooning down the street. You hear it first, don't you? Yeah. As well, the roars of this car.
It's sponsored by Ford, I think. This,
yeah, probably.
This sequence.
Why not? You know, take the money and run. And of course it cuts in and we get that real super close up of the driver being Will Smith, and he's got this beautiful German Shepherd, and they're hunting deer, aren't they?
What I notice here, quite interesting, because we come into this car and the first thing we introduced to is the gun. So he's got a military style weapon. I don't know whether it is military or not. It probably is. They probably just go to the arms, you know,
Kmart
people, and you know, the Hollywood arms. What do they get? Armory. Yeah, there's armory. They would have just said, give us like an M4 carbine, or it probably would have just said, give us one of those military type guns.
Looks really scary.
And says, "Why? What are we dealing with here?" You know, he's going to be in a car. Okay, here, you want this one. Oh, sweet. So it shows the gun first, and you're thinking, oh, that's a serious bit of military hardware. It's got like attached bits and pieces, and he picks it up, and you've seen him going through this empty street, and then something dashes across the front of his bonnet, but it's actually just a deer. So it's kind of almost a bit of a fake out there where you're thinking, oh, he's, you know, there's something dangerous, and it's not really. He's just hunting.
Yes. And that's basically what him and Sam are doing. They're hunting this pack of deer to try to eat. Then there's dodging. But what we're seeing is someone that's quite able, you know, because he's driving through these streets. There's smashed up cars. There's reeds growing. There's a lot of like movement, as in he's going very, very fast to keep with these deer. The deer then like go through a tunnel and then come out the other side of the tunnel. So we're seeing someone that's, and I think even what you're saying there with the gun is like, if that was me, I'd be like, I don't know how to use this gun. You know, I'm not comfortable with this, whereas he was comfortable using that gun. So it's saying something about him as a character, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as you said before, basically the scene ends with a save the cat moment, in that he runs up, and just when he's about to shoot one of the deer, a lioness grabs it,
yeah.
You know, and I guess there's a symbol there as well, like the monster taking the vulnerable, like he does with the zombies.
Yeah, predator.
Like maybe like a predator, like he's a predator.
Well, I think there's also the case there that, you know, nature is going on without them.
Yeah.
And that's something that we see a lot in these sort of movies where we're reminded it's almost a bit of an environmental thing. Is that
message, isn't it?
The world, humans aren't that important.
No,
in fact, everything's just moving on. Getting over it.
Yeah, we're the ones that are sentimental. So the setup there is that we can see that his daily routine, we kind of see that he has to hunt for food. When he does that, there is the butterfly as well. So there is a butterfly in that sequence, like a normal butterfly flutters by or whatever. He's searching for food, and he's also got Sam the dog. You see him in his kind of kitchen. He's got lots of supplies. So it's a very different, you know, you take things like the Walking Dead zombie stuff. They're kind of like scrounging for the latest baked beans tin thing that they open and share between 10 people. They're kind of all starving to death. Whereas this was the opposite.
This is, as you say, that kind of almost fantasy of it, where he just seems so well organised. His alarm beeps, and we don't really know what that's for at the moment. But he goes back and he washes the dog.
He's got this great big dog.
Squirts a bit of stuff down and locks his door.
And he's got all the modern comforts, doesn't he? He's got power. He's
running.
got
It's like it looks like he's actually quite content doing his.
The food he cooks looks pretty good. You know, like a
he
healthy.
Has this strange conversation with his dog. Telling
he's got the TV running, so it's like, oh, okay, this isn't too bad, is it?
Yeah, it's like be a nice little holiday.
Now, to me, this then seeps in. Yeah, we have this moment with the alarm and the sun setting, and the music changed, the tone changed, and his face changed. He'd played the dog, the No Worries, you know, the Bob Marley song, and was kind of having a moment, and the alarm pulls him out. And they even do it like he kind of tunes out, and the dog's barking, you can't hear the sound of the dog. So he kind of totally tunes out. And again, there's that moment of a jump cut to then obviously it's maybe an hour or two later and the sun's gone and it's nighttime and him and Sam are in the bath and he's got his gun out again and there's just all these
horrible
roars
noises
and
outside.
Screams and weird rustling noises all outside.
Yeah,
sounds like there's a whole army of things outside, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he's just in the bathtub. And I saw that as being, sort of the inciting incident.
Yeah, that's the catalyst, yeah.
Suddenly, it's not a surprise to Neville, but it's a surprise for us, the audience. And now we go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This movie isn't just about him surviving in the wild.
Yeah.
There's something terrible happening.
Yeah. After that, we have this sort of debate part, and so this is where we see this scene that costs. How do you spend $5 million and see it on a film? Blow up the Brooklyn Bridge. So we have this because he falls asleep. They've just used that as a natural motive to cut to this flashback sequence. So this first one, he picks up his wife and child. They're being escorted down New York. A city, normal New York, it looks like now. There's all people everywhere and everything like that. People hop in. He's driving quite erratically, quite fast. Him and his wife have this heated conversation. He's saying, it's about to happen. Go upstate, get supplies. He asks her how much cash she got out of the ATM. Not enough. Which was, so it's like he was really testy, wasn't he? He was really stressed. And then the president, he goes, he's about to announce it. And the president comes on the radio and says, sorry, but basically we're cordoning off New York.
We're closing New York.
Yeah. If you're on there, too bad. And so and then he wakes up from that. Oh, it does say, and that's where he says, he's going to stay. That's right. So she's saying, come with us.
Oh, we've got 2 or 3 weeks, I can still fix this.
I can still fix it. And his quote is, I'm not going to let this actually happen. His daughter mentions a butterfly and they dismiss her over that. So again, it's like 2 times as a butterfly in 10 minutes. So we're back to this apocalyptic world. He's Will Smith doing his muscle workout. You would have liked that. Sorry. Can you do that yet? The chin up thing?
Oh, yeah. That's a standard
You do?
thing.
Yep. Do you do it with your shirt off?
I don't
in the
look
corridor?
like him, though, unfortunately.
So he always likes to do this in his movies, I think, doesn't he? It must be in his contract. Scene with shirt off doing chin ups.
Yeah, in Bad Boys he does chin-ups too, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think in Independence Day there's something in there.
Independence Day he does, yeah.
Yeah, so it's his sort of thing, right? So he's super fit here. We see a bit more of his routine. He runs. Also his house. Did you start to pick up, he's got some famous paintings. He's got, stacks of books. So it's just sort of starting to show that he's kind of collected some weird, the important moments.
He's collected some stuff. And so we're going to see, Act 2, and I found this was very interesting about the break between 1 and 2, is his choice to enter Act 2 was done in a flashback, where he was telling his wife, no, I'm staying here, I'm going to fix this. That's that only makes any sense after we saw him huddling in the bathtub, and you start to go, oh, okay, he's chosen to be in this bad situation, and he's going to... his choice to stay and fix it is much like him in the bathtub going, no, I'm
persevering with this.
I'm persevering. And I thought that was an interesting way to do it, that would get this flashback to show the choice. I know. I just thought it's, as you said, this follows the beats very closely. It's it's a Hollywood 3-act structure.
Yeah.
But even with that, it's not a formula that
must, and that's the thing.
Dictates the way you do it.
What you and I are saying here is the catalyst, which it really is him in the bathtub. That's actually not a catalyst for him because that happens to him every night. So it's not, his world is not changing at that moment.
No,
I suppose maybe the way I'm thinking is the catalyst for him is that it is still happening. So it means he still has to keep going.
Yeah,
but it's really a catalyst for us as an audience. We're like, oh no, it's not just a fantasy.
That's that point where we, as the audience, now know what this film is going to address.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not just going to be him, prancing around playing with his dog in the
doing
city.
chin-ups.
Yeah,
with no shirt on.
There's something pretty serious that he's going to have to do, and then we get this flashback and find out what it is he's decided and determined to do.
Why is he here?
Yeah,
right?
And I quite liked that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
and when you do break these stories down, you do start to see that all of these films, the only films that are a little bit more obvious tend to be children's films.
Yeah.
Because they tend to have a slightly, more broken down plot. So a lot of the Pixar films and Disney films are really good ways of seeing the obvious points.
They are.
But that's because you need a 6 or a 7-year-old to be able to follow along and get it.
Yes.
Whereas this, it's a little bit easier. Like, those sort of flashbacks, the 6 or 7-year-old watching flashbacks like that, often confused with the timeline. They're going, well, hold on, why are they here? Were they just there? Where are all the people gone?
That's right. So we also learn in his basement, he's got the rats and he's doing the experiments on them. Lots of the rats are just dead or totally psychotic, apart from number 6, I think it was, who's maybe okay, maybe not.
Number 6, loss of aggression.
Yeah.
It was his pupils were responding to light. And it wasn't like the other rats were just freaking mental.
Or dead.
Throwing themselves at the walls trying to get at him.
I think
dead.
What's also important there is Neville is pretty dejected by everything. Like, he's doing this, and he's been doing it for years, it's not really going anywhere. And that leads into the next scene, which is really interesting, and it's important for moments in this film, is this DVD store. So, like you said, this
is the portrait of a lonely man.
Yeah.
Whereas previously in Act 1,
he
seemed to be having a fun time with his dog.
Yeah. And I guess that's the thing. This is how it plays out. Like, you are all alone, so you start talking to mannequins. And that's what he does. And he's got his whole thing. Even the fact that he's like, okay, I'm returning this DVD and just taking the next DVD. I'm up to the M's or whatever.
He could just pick up a whole bunch.
He couldn't. But he's got this routine, and Fred's out the front and he says hi to Fred. And he's got this woman in the corner that he kind of eyes off.
Well, that were the adult videos.
Yeah, they were the adult videos.
He's looking over there at her and going, well,
Yeah, hey. But he doesn't have the guts to talk to her. And I tell you what, if you're an actor, you want to be an actor, this is quite a good way of looking at how does an actor engage with a mannequin in a really realistic way, because what it's showing us is loneliness, craziness in a way, but it's also a very human interaction. He's like flirting with the woman at the DVD store. Of course, someone these days might go, DVD store?
I found it funny. What? 2007, because I was trying to remember when this film was made. I was going, DVD stores, like,
I know.
Because there was relatively recent looking posters up about the place. Like Batman versus Superman and Wicked, which of course were contemporary to the time.
Yeah.
But they still, because, say, Batman vs. Superman is still in the current sequence of DC movies, it still kind of feels like, it's...
Yeah, it doesn't feel that old.
It doesn't feel that old.
But even DVD stores, they were there, and then they're not now, right? Like,
no,
they sort
DVD
of
stores disappeared.
Like, they disappeared
very
quickly.
shortly after this film, in fact.
Yeah,
Not too long after.
Thanks to our good old friends at Netflix.
Thank you, Netflix.
Netflix.
Actually, you made life a lot easier for me.
You did make it a lot easier for me too. Oh, those returns. So maybe I would have been more inclined to return them if I had a sexy mannequin in the corner to flirt with. Maybe in the adult section. Instead of just me being there all alone in the adult section.
We are still waiting for Netflix to reach out to us regarding a sponsorship deal.
Come on, Netflix. We've done enough
until
Netflix.
then, I have to also say thank you to Amazon Prime.
That's right.
Netflix, if you want us to stop mentioning Amazon Prime,
sponsor Spacebrains. Yeah. So I know what Will would do. He's our buddy. Come on. And so I thought it was a great scene, that particular one. It really was very good. If you're an actor, just go fast forward, watch those scenes in the DVD store and see what happens. He also has this down scene where he's scavenging. You mentioned it before, people that had not made it. And the bit here that's kind of the downbeat is, I think it's positive in that he takes some items, but the downbeat is that he discovers like a bedroom that's a baby.
Dinner open till Christmas.
Yeah, and so it's like a baby's room that's all perfect, and there's a cot, and so it means that the baby never made it, or
they never got to have their little Christmas. You can imagine. Well, we won't go into it, but you can imagine the scenario. It'd be quite sad, and he does. He steps back from that because, it's a real downbeat, and we get further into his loneliness, and I think with these radio message he announces, where he says, "I'm a survivor," announcing on all AM stations or frequencies. every day, midday, when the sun is highest in the sky, I'm at the Southport or South Pier 5
Something
or
like
whatever
that,
it is, which is the one that's from his flashback where the helicopter got taken took off from.
And you can just see the Brooklyn Bridge is blown in half, years earlier. He plays golf from the back of a plane, the extremity of being alone in this place on this sea carrier.
But that's a bit of an upbeat again, where
it is.
he's kind of, again, having a bit of fun with it.
It is. And to me, this then leads to the fact that him and Sam notices one deer, and so from this plane, so they give chase. And so again, it's a great jump cut because they're no longer on this plane; they're chasing this deer, trying to hunt it. Sam runs ahead, and he runs into the darkness of this building, and straight away there's a difference, isn't there? Neville, Neville actually stops, and I think he says to himself, "Oh, Sam, no, you can't go in there. Like, I can't go in after you."
Yeah, I'm sorry, Sam.
I'm sorry. Like, there's a line like that, and then he goes in after him.
Yes.
So to me, that is actually then going into Act 2. That's now coming into the seriousness of the fun and games of this. So like shifting a gear into that. Okay, we've seen all this setup, we've seen all this debate, we've seen a little bit of why he's here. Now it's like, well, this is the point of watching the movie. It's
this is the monsters you're hoping to see.
This is what I want him to... I want to see Will Smith fight some zombies. This is the thing. And you beautifully described this scene before. It's very close cut. There's not much light. It's only the light of his gun, torch whatever you call it, snipe or whatever. He flashes around. When he's turning left, the camera's turning left. So we really can't see much. You can see the blood. Sam as well, bloody... good dog that he's been so far has just seemed to have vanished inside this place. There's no barking. There's no nothing, right?
Yeah, but my dogs ran off with people at various times.
I know. They do, right?
See, someone's jogging and then he just works perfectly at heel next to the jogger. Like, I'm like, why don't you walk like that next to me?
Jogger's dog now. And so to me, this is like, in trying to save Sam, he does discover a bit of a weirdness. Like, this is what I mean by the fun and games. Like, there's a group of these. They end up being called the Dark Seekers. Not that Neville calls them that, but that is the name that they have.
Yeah, I think the woman.
The woman kind of calls them that. Yeah. So we don't actually have a name, but we'll use that name throughout the describing part. And they're huddled around each other as well and doing this breathing, chanting thing. So they're not quite the zombies of leering out of the dark one at a time or whatever. They're some sort of pack mentality going on. He finds Sam cowering under a desk, kind of eyeing off something. He turns over. There's a dark seeker eating the deer. This thing charges at him, fires a gun. Of course, that kind of awakens them all.
Yeah.
And they chase him, and he runs, and he tells Sam to get out, and he crashes through, action hero style that Will is, through this building. And they come tumbling out after him just as they were about to get him. And we learn a rule about them, which is the sun hurts them because they all just kind of shrivel up and die really quickly.
Dies. I'm surprised that Will didn't. Old Robert Neville didn't suffer some injury there, jumping out of the first floor.
Yep, but he survived.
Yeah, but he did the Hollywood
roll,
trick,
didn't he?
He landed. The Darkseeker was the one that hit the ground.
Yeah, right.
And so if the Darkseeker hits the ground, he's protected.
Yes, it's like a mattress.
Like I'm pretty sure it would stop you from suffering the sort of really serious injuries, but he just gets up and he's cool about it.
Yeah.
I've tripped over and had pretty badly shaken experience just from the tripping and falling on a bit of hard concrete. So I don't know what
jumping out of a floor.
Yeah, so 3 meters up.
I think he did the special roll, the special Hollywood roll.
He's tough. You saw him do his chin-ups, right?
That's right. I mean, he's just muscle. He's good. He can't be out at that point in the film. I mean, imagine that. That's just... he falls out the building. My ankle. Spray my ankle. I'm just going to lie here and die.
It's not the midpoint yet.
No, that's right. He did it very quickly, but he's discovered these creatures, the Dark Seekers, and he tells Sam to stay. And there's a rule here, which he says he can get infected. Sam, you can get infected. You have to stay here for this one. I can't.
Yeah.
So it's not explained further than that, but it's like, oh, okay, so he's been infected, he's immune, whatever. And he sets this elaborate trap, and it's kind of, a rope tarpaulin back into where the Dark Seekers were, ties it up. You see this kind of car leering over a bridge. It's all just kind of like shot, so you're not exactly sure what's going on.
He A-teams it, really.
Yeah, he does. MacGyver kind of style. And with that, and he also puts a bit of his blood, he throws a bit of his blood in a sample into this thing, and he just stands back. And the next thing you know, you hear a bit of noise, and whoosh, this thing comes out. It's a catapult, rope, counterweight, trap, like animal trap idea.
Coyote, chase a roadrunner.
And this ghoul thing comes past him, wrapped in the tarpaulin and screaming and yelling, and he just kind of clunks it as the psycho that he is.
Hits it. No, he saved that cat. He's cool.
No, he's cool, right? Yeah,
and he knocks it out.
The important thing is, however, he gets a bit bemuddled or befuddled, whatever you want to say, because then this male Darkseeker leers out into the sunlight, roaring after him. And it starts getting burnt. Yeah, he starts getting burnt and he's
it's almost like he's trying to prove a point. He burns and burns and burns, and then he pulls
staring off. He's staring off Will.
It's almost as if he's saying to Will, the only reason I'm not coming to get you
is because of the light.
Is because there's too much light.
And he disappears into the darkness, and Will's he's a bit confused by that. Back at his lab, he has this female. She's breathing like crazy. He injects her with that serum number 6, the one that was on the rat earlier.
And he misuses the term vaccine.
Does he?
Well, because he says, if this vaccine works, she'll be cured. And you go, vaccines don't cure people.
Yeah. Right.
Like, it would be... He's trying to get his immunity cure. Because, for example, we have cured people of HIV by finding immune people.
Yep.
And then doing bone marrow transplant to introduce the immunity into them. And they've been cured. So you can take something from an immune person into a sick person and cure them, but you can't vaccinate them. It's too late. They're already infected.
Right. Yeah, because that's the whole thing, even with what people say with COVID, like a vaccine's not a cure.
No.
It's a preventative.
It's like wearing a condom, you know.
Yeah. HIV,
and
condoms.
Sometimes condoms break.
Leering down an interesting path here with your analogies tonight. Sorry.
Yes.
Go back to the car analogies. So here,
imagine a condom filled with
wrapped over a car,
and if you took the bad man out of the condom,
and you put a
policeman in there,
okay, makes a lot of sense.
Different situation.
Roaring down a.
If you're a policeman listening to this, wearing a condom right now,
and you're listening to this,
I'm not sure what's going on there. That's weird.
That is very weird. You probably
But I want
need
you to
seek...
film it and send it. No, don't.
Yeah. Let us know. Is it some sort of interesting science fiction film? I would say so. So with this female Darkseeker, whatever he's injecting her with, it works and then just doesn't work, kills her.
Yeah.
He re-injects her and brings her back to life.
Yeah, it's probably like adrenaline shot or something.
Which was interesting, and he's dejected. I think that kind of is noting something a little bit about him being the way he is. This is where we go back to a flashback. So we're back to that bridge, his wife, they're out of the car now. They're sort of storming through the crowd. The soldiers are scanning everyone's eye. I thought that was a pretty cool little piece of tech, hey? Scanning everyone's pupil.
Yeah.
And it's like green, red, green, the real visual, no, you're infected, not infected.
Yeah.
And Will's green, go through, I think the child's green or something, and then the wife, red, straight away, and the soldier's like, fuck off, and then Will's like, no, scan her again. There's a bit of commotion, and he convinces them to scan her again.
Say,
and I mean, the thing with that straight away, because they re-scan her and she's green, I'm like, well, those scanners aren't actually so accurate.
Yeah, and if I'm the person standing next to her who just got kicked out, scan me again.
Scan me again, yeah. But it also doesn't indicate that you're blowing up they're trying to contain it to the island. It's already out there, isn't it? Like, if those scanners aren't that foolproof.
Well, yeah,
I
just got to think
it indicates that someone's probably over the other side on the mainland.
There's not 500 million people in Manhattan. No, there's probably like 5 or 8 or something.
Yeah,
million. Not that.
Fact check, sorry on that. I think it's about 20 actually, but anyway. It's not Soylent Green 44 million in 2022, but I think it is about 20.
Is that in the greater New York area or the just Manhattan Island?
Oh, yeah, maybe it is great. Yeah, I don't know. Fact check us. Tell us. I've never been there, so I don't know.
If you've been locked onto Manhattan Island because they've blown up all the bridges.
The population is 1, Surrey. 1. It's 1. It's the Will. Anyway, and then and that's that flashback. So they get through, and they're heading to their helicopter. Yeah,
and that was that jump cut as well. It really tense.
Oh,
Get on the helicopter, and you hear that the helicopter noise is winding up.
Yeah, no, but it doesn't quite. And this is where she gives him the puppy. So she gives him Sam the puppy. Yeah, the helicopter's starting, and they're like, "Going, we're going to have to get going." Yeah, and that's when it cuts.
It cuts, and that was unresolved tension there.
It was
just the sound of the helicopter blade, and something bad has to happen, but then you're thinking, hoping it's not. It's just again one of those moments where you're going, surely no, maybe he just doesn't know if they escaped or not, if they're alive or not. But anyway.
And now this next bit hits home on so many levels, but this heads us to the midpoint of and is exact. If you're watching it and you pause it's
the 46
right,
minute mark or something.
Like it's right on halfway through, whatever the length of the film is, it's exactly halfway through. So, and I love this. He's driving with Sam, and he happens to pass something, catches his eye, and he's talking to Sam about his birthday. So he's kind of having a meaningless conversation.
Oh, if you get a surprise
party, whatever. Sam's just like, no, I'm not.
Just
doing
tell me. I'm not going to. Disappointed.
And he sees something, catches his eye, stops, looks, and it's Fred, the mannequin, is now just standing, obviously not in front of a DVD store. Yeah. He's in front of the Netflix building, and he pulls back, and he's like, what? And he like hurries up.
What you doing, Fred?
And I love this.
What you doing?
Fred, what are you doing? Fred, what? No, Fred.
Are you real? I'm asking you.
You're going to tell me if you're real. He pulls out that gun and he's like, tell me you're real, Fred. You better tell me. And, in a moment of insanity, really just blows him apart as well. Like just fires off, right? And it's I love that. So, like that all of that happening is so real, I reckon. Like if that mannequin had moved, that would just send you bonkers, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like if you've been alone for 3 years, no other human, and that freaking mannequin has just been moved.
Oh yeah, because you could think, I don't know whether it's 3 years, how long he's had that mannequin set up at the DVD store.
That's right.
It's long enough for him to develop a relationship with it.
Yeah, and anyway, and then he sort of thinks, because that's the thought, right? And it's actually a very sane thought. He then looks up, like he's like, is it a trap? Like, is there there is other humans, and and so he fires that big gun of his up into the skyscrapers and all this sort of stuff. But nothing, there's no return fire, there's no sign of life. And so he's kind of composing himself, and he walks over to this where Fred has been blown apart. There's a puddle, and he kind of looking at Fred, and he's very confused by it all. And he just steps, and there's a clinking sound. Yeah. And then the taxi that's sort of beside him falls off that pillar or bridge or whatever. And with that, he's just hoisted up. The same kind of contraption.
It's a lovely... Yeah, the sequence of events and the sounds.
Yeah, and the way they shot it, it's the same as when he caught the female zombie.
As the audience, you sort of go,
oh, no, it's the zombies that have got you.
Will Smith, his character's in there going, what? I don't get it. Because he's convinced that the Darkseekers are just animals, basically.
Yeah. Anyway, and in that motion, he whacks his head and he passes out. So he's unconscious.
Tellingly, he drips blood down into the water because these guys can smell the blood.
That's right. They
like their blood.
So to me, that is the midpoint.
That's exactly on the midpoint right there. Like the moment he gets hoisted into the air, his fun and games has come to an end, and he's been...
there's no more fun and games for you.
Reversity.
So hung upside down, he starts to come to, his watch is beeping. So we know that's a great connection back to when we were taught that rule, right? Like, isn't it... This is the thing. If you're a writer and you're noticing what they've done in this film, the alarm clock earlier in the film sets up the inciting incident, but it's also now being reused to raise the stakes again later in the film.
Yeah, because now you know he's got a time clock.
Yeah, as an audience, you're like, because he was really worried when that went the first time. And you can tell it's darker. Sam's barking away, trying to get him, alert. He kind of struggles awake, turns his alarm off, cuts the rope and falls to the ground. But when he falls, Was it another trap or something?
No, he just falls on his own knife.
Oh, it falls on his own knife, and so that stabs him into his thigh.
Yeah,
somewhere.
And this is a good little effect as well. Feature of the writing.
Yeah,
because had he just fallen, stand up, walk back to his car, like there's no tension there.
Yeah.
It's just like even if the sun was going down, the dogs are barking, he could still just run.
Yeah, run to the car.
Or run over and get his gun or whatever, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
But so he stabs himself in the leg and he tries to move. Nothing's bad happened yet.
Yeah.
And he goes, can't do it. So he rolls around and goes, okay, I'm going to have to slowly drag myself back. And he just drags back a little bit slowly. And then you hear that grrrr. And Sam growls back. And you're watching that, your heart sinks.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, shit, he can't move. There's just
Very
that strip of sun. And his alarm's going off.
Yeah.
And this is, again, one of those really tense scenes.
Yeah, it is.
It just builds and it builds.
Yeah.
And, he's scooting back as fast as he can on his
The sun's closing down and closing down.
And then that dude releases dogs.
Yeah.
Which, again, that's showing a bit more than just being an animal.
Yeah.
He's created a trap from, observing what it's
That's
done.
right.
Like, it's quite a sophisticated trap.
It is, yeah.
And then he's using dogs to attack because he knows that this guy's dangerous.
Yes.
Like, you don't go charging after him.
Send in the hounds, so to speak, first.
And they get stopped by this beam of light, which is a great... again, it's like... there must be other movies where there's something the same as like there's dogs or people trying to get somewhere and there's like a
barrier.
drawbridge or a gate slowly opening. But this is just... There's not even a physical barrier there. It's just this beam of light across and it's shrinking.
Well, for the audience, what you're doing is like, is he going to make it to the car? Like, Sam, we've already had the tension of the Sam almost dying earlier.
And we sort of, we know because we've been trained by these movies, even if you don't know this structure we're talking about, you kind of know the structure. Yeah. I remember as a kid watching the Disney films, the sports teams or the little boy lost his dog or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You'd always know that point where you think things are going okay. You go, no, there's like the whole rest of the movie. Yeah. Something bad has to happen.
Something has to happen,
And so this is something bad happening. And so you're trained into going, how bad is it going to get?
So as soon as that sunlight ends, he's kind of gotten himself 2/3 the way back to the car, but not enough. Those dogs are going to be fast. So the sunlight ends, the dogs hunt them. Basically, one attacks him, but Sam bowls that one out of the way. The other one, he manages to get to his gun, so then he fires 3 or 4 times, but this thing still comes on top of him. But he shoots it off, and then he turns to help Sam when the third one attacks him. And so whilst he's fighting that one, he can't see what's going on with Sam, and then Sam comes in and saves the day and enables him to fight off the last one, but Sam is bit.
Sam's been bitten.
And we knew the rule earlier.
I don't know this.
This is the thing. So this is what I was saying. You're right in basically setting up what's going to happen in the next stuff. So he fangs it back. He's gotten away from the Dark Seekers, but Sam is damaged goods. He gets back to the lab. He tries to do something.
He uses Serum
6, yeah.
And it doesn't
do anything, and he's hugging Sam.
Sam's first that's coming out.
Yeah, and the teeth, he looks at the teeth and you can see his eyes start rolling backwards, and it's very sad because...
It's very sad. He has to cuddle his dog to death.
The film has only had Neville and Sam. So for us as an audience, we're now just passing halfway of the film. All we really know is Sam and Neville, and Sam is dead. And he holds him and suffocates him, basically, doesn't he?
Yeah, I again, watching this film, this was what I feared in that first encounter.
Yeah.
And then it's come true.
Now it's come true.
Yeah, I know.
Yep. So we are here in not the midpoint. We are in those sort of bad guys closing in. So Sam has died. He buries Sam and back where he kind of growing some crops, and this is where another butterfly comes by.
Yeah.
And if you think about a butterfly overall, I mean, what do butterflies go through? They're caterpillars. They go through that whole... I mean, my wife's done it in the laundry the last 3 years in a row, having the butterflies go through that whole process. But symbolically, butterflies...
What does she turn into?
Oh, she turns into something crazy. It's unbelievable. But the butterflies, the caterpillars, they turn into these butterflies. But, it's bizarre that a caterpillar, which, you get these things you can't even see on the leaf, and every day they double in size. They eat the leaf, they eat the leaf.
I know about that.
And then that's just what I do every day with my lunch. But anyway, they double and double and double, and then all of a sudden they create that weird cocoon thing, and what comes out is incredible. It's nothing like the caterpillar. And butterflies are all about release and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting that they've used that. Metamorphosis,
Into something beautiful. There's also spring, the birth of life and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and if you think about the humans here, Neville thinks they're sick and stupid and lost the humanity, when in reality it's maybe him that has lost his humanity.
Yes.
So the metamorphosis is sort of the wrong way around.
This is that next great scene in the DVD store.
Yeah, but he goes back to the mannequin and he says, well, I promised to talk. I promised my friend that I would talk to you.
Yes, and he sits there again. This is another a great scene that
It's tight as anything. It's close
he
up.
totally convinces you that he is genuinely talking, having a heart to heart
to this woman.
And that's that point where I think he realizes that he's sad.
Yeah.
That he's actually just sad and lonely. Like this game was fun when he had Sam, and now he's in there talking to this mannequin. And he's just like, nah, this just doesn't work.
Fred stuffed it.
I'm not getting it. Like Sam was my real company.
Yeah.
The mannequin was just kind of my game.
Yeah, it's just a fun game. Yeah, and that leads him to set up this trap on the bridge and kill as many people as possible. It's basically a suicide mission, So he's bowling through, as many as he can.
Yeah, smashing them up.
They're smashing him up. They're attacking. They're also attacking him back. So it's not just like, again, driving through a herd of zombies that don't have any thoughts. They actually seem to have.
Well, yeah, because the big boss guy actually starts directing them, and they knock the car over, flip it, and then there's some light happens, and they don't. I imagine maybe UV light or something happens, and they all go away, and he gets cut out and rescued by a woman.
And while he's passed out from that, because he's kind of been a bit hurt, this is the all is lost moment. Something or someone has to die. It's the revealing of what happens to his wife and his child. So we go back to that big scene. He's saying goodbye to them on the helicopter, and I'll be with you in a couple of weeks, blah, blah, blah. Helicopter starts taking off. We see the Brooklyn Bridge being destroyed, so something dying, the access that way. And the bridge is going up. The helicopter is going up and up, and screaming, and that on the other platform, people are in hysterics. They kind of attack another helicopter, and that one starts losing control and just heads straight towards the helicopter his wife and child are in.
Bad luck.
And it is as though they're about to collide that then he wakes up. And he's back in his home. He's hurt, but fixed. And this woman and child are there, and they're kind of cooking breakfast. And it's really bizarre for him. It's very alien. He's post-traumatic.
This is very Act 3, I think.
So, to me, this is just before it. This is the leading into it because it's actually worse here because he sits down and they seem to be like, oh, we rescued you and we're going to go onwards and come with us and, we're going to do this. And he's like, I was saving that bacon for something special. Yes. You're not special. Like, what is this?
Everyone's dead.
Everyone is dead, Yes. And so she's trying to be optimistic, but he is pessimistic.
But mind you, this is also, though, because as far as we knew at this point, he's the only person immune, which, the Omega Man type thing.
Yeah.
But it's revealed that she was on, like, a hospital ship.
Yeah.
And someone came back that was infected.
Yeah.
They had to stop for supplies, and they got infected.
Yeah.
And there were 5 of them who were immune. But, of course, it appears that 3 of them got killed by others.
Yeah.
And that did kind of spark a bit of interest.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's like, there were 5.
Yeah.
There were 5 of you.
Yeah.
Because you've got to think now, and we point this out in all of these apocalypse scenarios, it's like there's so many people in so many different places and so diverse that hard to really weed us all out. Short of, a life-ending comet.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And we do get a bit of this conversation about God, what brought you here? Why'd you come? I just was told I've got to go to Vermont. I know it's there. You don't know.
There's nothing there.
Yeah, because he's lost all of his hope. And it's not really about people sort of bring this up as being a religious thing. I don't think it really was a religious thing. It was just that he had lost all hope.
Yeah.
He was just convinced, okay, everyone else is dead. I am the only person alive. And he's so grumpy at this point because that view has been challenged.
Yeah.
Because he's met 2 other people.
Yeah.
And they were talking about at least 3 other people who are still alive.
But they're meeting him at the bottom.
So even this thought that there is a colony of Vermont is like, if he goes, if she's right and there really is, and he goes and it's there, he is just like, everything he's done has been in vain. He's lost Sam, he's lost his family, everything. He didn't need to. He just had to go to Vermont and he would have been sweet, type of thing. I think that's got to be like his rock bottom, is where he's confronted with that reality that perhaps his entire modern existence has been pointless.
And so that's right. He chucks the shits at them basically and storms off. And there's a moment of reflection.
Yeah.
He sits in the bath, not having a bath, but just sits in it and kind of, again, it's that real tight close-up on Will's face and you see his eyes blinking around. He's really thinking. And then in the next scene, it's a bizarre scene, this next one. He wanders downstairs. He's changed literally his clothes, had it freshened up, so to speak. But he goes down and Shrek is playing and he does this weird scene, but it's a bonding scene with the little kid more than anything. But he repeats everything that's about to happen and explains that he likes Shrek. So to me, this was like, he kind of smooths things over and then it's to break into 3 because it's like, well, we're going to go off to this place. Are you going to come? And his answer is no, but he's sort of going to help them in a way. Yeah. And I think the night progresses and he locks everything up and he takes the child up into the bed. And it's very symbolic that it's very healing that, I think, for him because it's the same as how he carried his own child earlier in the film in the flashbacks. And so, she sees the bedroom still the same. And then he has a nice scene, a nice moment with Anna where he explains the Bob Marley. She's never heard of Bob Marley and so he plays it. But he tells that story of what Bob Marley was attacked and had to come back out and play.
The bad guys aren't taking a day off.
No,
so
and he ends up with, you got to light up the darkness, and that's in this film. It's like you light up, you light the UV up, it kills the monsters, so to speak. Like you light the darkness, but the darkness is also inside him now. Like he's depressed and down, you know, so he's got to light it up. So with that, but the Darkseekers kind of attack.
Yeah, he is. We're just getting that connection, and they've said we're going first thing in the morning, and you're getting the feeling, well, maybe he'll go.
Maybe he'll go.
But then you hear the noises, and then we go, okay, we've got to...
Well, he's like, oh, when did you come back? Was it still dark? And they're like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I think, we had to get you back. And
well, the light was just coming up.
was just coming, and he's like, they followed you, you know? And so he sort of gets to action, and we see them all outside, and he detonates, a huge explosion that he's got set up, his traps. He lets go of all his traps, basically.
Yes.
Which destroys a whole bunch of them, but they keep coming.
Yeah, it gives him a bit of a lull, enough time to gather his forces.
But it's pretty quick. There's one that attacks him. He fights, gets injured, but he kills it. He gets his gun, shoots that, runs upstairs. There's another one that's ripping holes out of the ceiling.
Yeah, so people can get in.
And Anna and the child are hiding in fear in the corner, so he shoots that one out. And then he can see the head Darkseeker outside kind of roar, and they all kind of attack at once.
There's another wave of them.
There's another wave of them, and they're climbing up onto the roof because that one has created a hole into the ceiling. So again, it shows a lot of intelligence, doesn't it? Suddenly, like they had a plan of attack.
Well, yeah, he'd gathered an army.
Yeah. And also, but it's like, get in and destroy the roof because we'll come in through the roof.
Yeah.
So they run to the lab, and as these Darkseekers descend and get into where this female Darkseeker, because he's got a special cornered off.
This is kind of the reversal, isn't it? Because their plan was, fight off the Darkseekers, get down to the lab, and lock ourselves in there until sunrise. That plan is spoilt because this Darkseeker is reverting somewhat to humanity.
Yeah.
She's not completely restored, but her skin color's coming back, her eyes are responding, her breathing and heart rate and everything are all back down to more normal levels.
So it's possible the cure is working.
Yeah, it's he's on the right track. If that's not the cure, it's getting close.
Yeah, and he says, well, the cure is in our blood. The cure is us. So you've got to get to safety. So this is an interesting thing, but because then the male dark seeker and the others smash through and they run up. They're surrounding them, so they're safe inside this little lab bubble, glass bubble thing. But this key dark seeker, the partner, runs up and then starts headbutting this glass furiously.
Yes.
And Will's saying to them, stop, I think I can cure you, but they're all like a pack of animals.
Well, they're probably kind of thinking, what do you mean, cure us from what?
Cure us from what, yeah. But anyway, so he's smashing it, and it's interesting because as he's smashing it, the glass cracking and the way the glass shards, is that right? Shades?
Yeah.
Yeah. It starts to look like a butterfly, and that's kind of the shape that it's appearing. Now, this is where we get two climaxes, and what I mean by that is not two climaxes. We're in time, sorry, we're in time. There's actually two versions of how this film ends. So to give you a little bit of a setup, they did do a theatrical release in the US, and then people didn't like that ending, and so they reshot a new ending, and that became the main iamlegend film that most of us saw. And the other one was kind of thrown out, and they put it on the DVD as an extra. DVDs again.
It was a common thing back in the day.
It was. It's a shame. I mean, but look, you invest $150 million into a film, and if people start saying we don't like the ending, they get scared and they want to go back.
Things like places like Netflix are doing that. If you look at like The Witcher, and Amazon has done it with The Wheel of Time, for example, you go on there, they've got their little extras now, little interviews with the crew and behind the scenes looks and so on.
Yeah, they always did that, but this
nice.
This is actually a different ending to what they originally came up for. So the first ending is that Neville sort of protects the woman and child, Anna and the child, shoves them in the fire chimney or something.
The coal
gives
chute.
them, the coal chute gives them the cure. And whilst this Darkseeker kind of then does the final blow, he sacrificed himself and blows everything up.
Boom.
Boom. So that's version one.
He is the light in the dark.
Yeah, he's the lightness in the dark. Number two is that he notices on the female Darkseeker's neck is a butterfly tattoo.
Yeah.
And he's like, And he looks at this male Darkseeker, the one that's bashing its head against the window, and it's like, he's like this because he's obviously her partner.
Yeah.
And maybe in all his sadness and isolation, he resolves to hand her over. So he kind of signals that and tells Anna to open the door.
Yes.
And he opens the door, and the Darkseekers all sort of stop and watch him very cautiously. And he wheels her out, and the male screams in his ear, sort of thing. But also is like, oh, she's here, like he's a bit reassured. And he says to them, I have to get a syringe. He gets a syringe, prods her, she comes back alive, she's breathing, all that sort of stuff. And that lead Darkseeker is like, picks him up. And there's a great little moment. They look at each other, and they're definitely, in love sort of idea.
Yeah, and the male Darkseeker sees that board of all the dead things that Willsmith apologises for.
Yeah, he does. But there's a nice look there where he kind of, it's like we could rip him apart. We could. But he actually chooses not to.
Yeah.
And there's that thought. You see there's that thought. He's like, should we rip you apart? And it's like, actually, you're a bit sad. You're on your own. We're together, I think. I think that was the look. Now, maybe I was reading too much into it. Let me know. There's those two versions. In that version, he does then leave with Anna and go off sort of to the sanctuary, or they're heading off to it. I don't think they get there, but they head off to it. And in the theatrical version, Anna and the child arrive at this sanctuary space.
Yes.
The end.
Yes.
So it's a great film. It takes you through an absolute fantasy if you're interested in being all alone fighting these Darkseekers with a lovely pet dog. living the night in fear. I like the sound of this. This sounds terrific to me.
Well, it does remind me of when the kids were younger.
Yeah, the baby
You'd sit
stage
there
especially.
And you hear that little whimper and you go,
Yeah.
don't,
no,
just go
don't.
back to sleep, go back to sleep. And sometimes they would, that you wouldn't hear anymore, and then you get to go back to sleep. And other times it'd be like just 5 minutes on, and then it becomes a full-on cry, and you go, oh, God.
It starts again. And you go to the bathtub with your dog and a gun and just shake. Will they stop? For the love of God, will they stop?
Will they stop?
No, of course, we only joke. We only kid.
So where'd this one come on your ladder, dude?
Well, sort of in the middle, and I kind of put it in between two real thinking ones because I feel like this is more of a heart-stopping film. I don't think it's a deep and... I mean, it's got a lot of depth to it, but I thought it's one that kind of picks up the pace. So, you know, you talked about it earlier, like, really sucking you in when Sam goes into that factory, the scene where he's hung upside down, and even the ending of this, it's unknown, like what's about to happen, and the tension of this film. So I thought I'm going to throw it between the Australian film The Dish and that great film The Towel. So because I thought like both of them are kind of more thinking, you know, slow moving, slow paced sci-fi, whereas this one's a nice fast action, you know, roaring muscle cars, Will jumping out of buildings, fighting these zombies, right on the beats. And, yeah, I thought it'd be kind of like a cool mixing up the pace that way.
Wow, I did this as the trilogy with I Am Mother, I Am Legend, Interstellar.
Ooh,
I Am
okay.
Interstellar. Because I like
Nolan, change it.
three very different looks at an apocalypse.
Yeah.
So in Interstellar, of course, the food crops are all failing. There's global warming. Goodness knows what other problems are going on. And the guy has to go out and save the day.
Yeah.
And he does it through, you know,
Space travel.
magical fashion. I Am Mother, of course, is the robot raising humans to repopulate the Earth.
Yeah.
And, you know, testing them. Mm. Like, my interpretation is that because she was the third embryo to be brought back.
She was, yeah.
And so in my mind, it's like, you know, raising them. And then there was a couple of these little tests. Okay, well, what does she do with the mouse? What does she do when she's introduced to another human? Mm. You know, how does she deal with that? And how does she deal then with me revealing this secret? And does she have the will to live on, and will she be a good mother?
Yeah.
And by that, I mean a good mother of the human species, as opposed to necessarily, you know, raise one individual person well. So I sort of like that. I thought that would, you know, I've got a few of these sort of little duology or little trilogies in my ladder as you go along there.
Yeah.
Of course, you could look at it as I Am Legend, Interstellar, and Cargo.
Yeah,
which again is another sort of way of doing it there.
A lot of end of the world scenarios in sci-fi films.
I think it's a very common one. It
is. It's a common theme, isn't it?
It makes for good action, I think, and drama.
Yeah.
Like, you really crank it up.
Yep. Okay, well, where is it on your ladder? Let us know, or where we talked about it, let us know what you think about our position on our ladders as well. So, what about the science, Surrey? Are we talking about why vaccines do not work and why no one should have the COVID vaccine, or COVID vaccines are going to lead to mutant dark seekers? Are we going down that conspiracy theory?
I kind of hope they do.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. I've had the double dose, so I'm good. I'm ready for this dark seeker.
Go! I'm going to rip someone to pieces.
Yeah.
No, see, well, I will talk about vaccines, but I'll move. You know, I'm not going to touch on any of the political parts of it. Like, you know, should it be mandated? What are the requirements? All that sort of. Let's actually just talk about the history, the science of it, and so forth, because vaccines, along with say antibiotics, have been hailed as perhaps some of the greatest life-saving technology of all time. You can look at any other given technology we have, but it was antibiotics and vaccines that meant human life just exploded in number, which some people would argue is not necessarily a good thing, but in quality. So the invention of the vaccine, in fact, inoculation is something that goes back quite a way. So the inoculation is where you introduce something into something else. Usually it's referring to a virus or a bacteria into something. When I make my yogurt, I inoculate my milk with the yogurt bacteria so it gets infected. In terms of humanity...
That sounds lovely.
Inoculation
when you put it that way.
Was already being done in Asia and African medicine is called... And it sort of got brought in to Europe and Britain as this... what do they call it? Variolation, which is taking a bit of a virus and infecting yourself with it in a controlled manner. It was as deadly as it sounds. And it was better than meeting the bacteria in the wild. So often it would be the case if you find someone who had survived smallpox, for example, but at the point where they're recovering from smallpox, you'd then go and get yourself infected by them. And you still had a 20% chance of death, which is pretty mean. But it was better than just sort of the wild strains. But it was just terrible. And to put that in a perspective, smallpox itself is what really brought about the whole vaccination process. Because smallpox as a disease was tremendously contagious. Like at the time, so we're talking about this fellow, it was the 1700s, and we had Francois-Marie Arouet, also known as Voltaire. At the time that he was writing, in the 1700s, 60% of the population caught smallpox at any given time, per year, and 20% died.
Wow.
You can imagine 20%, so it's about 12%. That would be about 3 million Australians dying.
Jeez.
And it wasn't a nice death.
No.
It was a terrible, terrible death. And this was a recurrent problem. Like smallpox was an absolute scourge. However, along came this fellow. His name was Jenner, Edward Jenner. He was a scientist, so he was a naturalist, zoologist. He did some very beautiful pictures and so on. And he studied the cuckoo, which was quite, one of his fancy things. However, he was getting into this idea of inoculation, because a number of doctors around that time were getting into it. This wasn't just Edward Jenner being some genius.
Yeah.
There was already, for example, in 1766, Daniel Bernoulli, he analysed smallpox morbidity and mortality data to demonstrate the efficacy of inoculation. In 1768, English physician John Fuster had realised that prior infection with cowpox rendered a person immune to smallpox. So there's already kind of this idea that you can be immune by being exposed.
Yeah.
And there's also there's a whole bunch of other investigators in England and Germany who had sort of tested cowpox against smallpox to some extent.
Yep.
But the reason Jenner is known for it is because he tested his hypothesis in what can only be a very 18th century fashion. So he also noted that the milkmaids who would get cowpox would not get smallpox. And so he grabbed his gardener's 8-year-old son. I don't know how you get access to an 8-year-old boy. I guess they just weren't that valuable.
Back in those days, yeah.
They were cheap at the time, I suppose. And he got himself some pus from the cowpox blisters from the hands of Sarah Nelms, a milkmaid who'd caught cowpox from a cow called Blossom, apparently, or so I'm told. He inoculated James, this 8-year-old boy, so you can imagine that, by basically getting a bit on getting a needle, and I don't mean like a sewing needle, not like an injection needle, dipping it in cowpox pus and then jabbing it into this kid.
Made sure he got it.
It made sure. So James came down with cowpox, which, it made him a bit ill. He didn't feel great. He had a bit of a fever, but it was a couple of days he was okay. And this is where Jenner gets his fame. He then injected Phipps with smallpox.
Lovely.
So here you go.
20% chance of dying.
And the people who survive, have terribly scarred. It's a very bad disease.
He was the gardener's son. So
he was the gardener's son. He was totally immune to it. It challenged him, as I say, a couple more times, and he was immune.
Yeah.
Smallpox did not touch this boy anymore, so hurrah. Jenner then went on and got another 23 additional subjects. Now, I don't have any particular, including his own 11-month-old son. So I'm going to guess that's out of a bit of desperation. Like, you lost babies very easily in the late 1700s, and they got, because there was an oncoming, wave of smallpox. So he went and inoculated his own little bubby. They all survived just fine. And he recorded all of this because, as I said, he was a scientist. And so very quickly...
He wasn't just doing it for fun.
No. Well, see, very quickly then, just a few years later, he got a lot of money then from the king and the parliament in order to roll this vaccine out. And this vaccine was so effective, we now no longer have smallpox. The only smallpox in existence is a small sample of it held in an infectious laboratory, for studying things. And they're even... Actually, I wonder if they've even destroyed it yet. But they sort of put forward the point, we should destroy this. Like, it's symbolic. We have had victory over this disease. So I tell you that, like, without a doubt, 100% a surety that vaccines and the vaccination process, which is to say, introduce a part of a disease or something that your immune system can then build on. So the vaccine isn't making you immune. It's not a drug. It's not something that stays in your body. It's something like I said, it's in inoculation. It's introducing a bit of virus or a bit of protein material that your immune system can recognize and build itself. So your immunity comes from your own natural immune system naturally fighting off this natural disease.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of confusion there. There's a lot of people who think the vaccine itself, I mean, as I said in this movie, I Am Legend, he even says, I'm going to give her the vaccine and see if it cures her. Like, the vaccine does not do that. Before the smallpox vaccine, as I said, they had this inoculation process, but it's not called a vaccine because it wasn't like a controlled, studied thing. It was just, let's get people, expose them to bits of this disease.
Yeah.
And then they'll be immune. And that's true. It's the same thing. Because I've heard people say, I'm not going to use the COVID vaccine. I'm going to rely on my own natural immunity. Newsflash, you don't have a natural immunity to COVID. That's why it spreads so well. The only way you get a natural immunity to COVID is by being exposed and infected by COVID or a vaccine.
Well, yeah, a vaccine can expose you.
Your body produces the same response. Like, that's the whole trick. That's the whole cowpox, smallpox thing, is that the response the body had to cowpox produced the immunity which saved people from smallpox. So, without a doubt, 100%, I will tell you right now, the vaccine theory works. Now, there is a trick, of course, because you can't then just generalize the vaccine theory to every individual specific instance of a medication or application thereof. An example of that is when we're talking about what are vaccines. Some of them are like the smallpox, cowpox sort of thing, where you actually have what's called an attenuated live vaccine. So that's a virus. It's a real virus. It's live in that it will infect, but it's attenuated. It's like cowpox. Maybe like cowpox gives you a bit of a fever. You don't feel so good, but it has no lasting problems. And so you have these attenuated viruses where, in a lab, they will purposefully breed a virus to be less dangerous, but still very similar to the original one. So less dangerous that your body, a normally healthy person, will have no problem whatsoever defeating it. But in so doing, gain that immunity, which will transfer to being immune to being the most dangerous one. Now, the benefit of this, of using a live attenuated virus vaccine is you get a very strong, very quick immunity. Your body will produces a very strong response early on, like much faster than, say, for example, a dead vaccine.
Yeah, right.
A dead virus vaccine. And so that's really good, because that means that if you see a disease taking over, sweeping through a community, you can vaccinate, and within days you'll stop it because they'll all be immune. There is a bit of a problem here, and this is where one of these things come from. So some of the misunderstandings or concerns are genuine, in that the polio vaccine came in two varieties. One of them was injected, and it was a dead vaccine, a dead virus. That is to say, it was parts of a virus, not a whole virus. By itself, it had no capacity to spread, but it had enough of the protein that your body could recognize it. Mm-hmm. But you had to inject people. It had to be stored under certain conditions. It was kind of difficult to deploy.
Yeah.
Then there was an oral virus vaccine, which was live attenuated. So they'd taken this polio virus and they'd bred it in various tissue cultures and so forth until it was meek and mild, and you could just take it a little drink. Like you take a little shooter and you would very quickly gain immunity to polio. That's fantastic. And indeed, the people who took this vaccine were immune to polio. But because they did this in mass, it's a numbers game. You give a whole heap of people this live but attenuated vaccine, you do get some mutations. And sometimes this attenuated vaccine recombines and becomes an effective virus.
Right.
And you get reinfection in the people who have not yet been vaccinated. So this caused problems in various places around the world, where you start rolling out the vaccine, and if you don't deploy it fast enough, but it covers enough people, there is a chance. And it came down to being, was it 3 in a million? So basically 3 in a million people were basically getting polio as a side effect, not from they themselves taking the vaccine, but from other people taking the vaccine, and it had a live virus, and that virus mutated and became dangerous again.
Yeah, right.
And in 2017, wild polio cases at record lows were outnumbered by the cases of vaccine-derived polio, which sounds bad, and it is. But what it means is, from 2017 till now, you have been more likely, like we're talking about 1 to 3 in a million chance, it's very small.
Yeah.
You're more likely to get polio from other people being vaccinated than you were from just polio in the wild. Which has led a lot of countries now to sort of say, well, we're not going to do that. Which it's like the wild polio is so low now that we just don't need to take the danger. And Australia is one of these countries. We don't use live vaccines for polio. So we don't use live vaccines for any of these things. So that's very interesting. So there has been at various times concern. And I have personally met a person who had partial paralysis of a leg because of polio, because they hadn't been vaccinated in time and they got the tail end of one of these outbreaks.
Right.
So absolutely, there are concerns that people have. Nothing to do with conspiracies. There's not a decision to try and infect people. Nobody wants that. It might surprise you, but there's not a hidden cult of people that want to destroy everyone. Like that's a movie, not real life. In real life, you get idiots who will try to take profit and will cut corners, and that's what was that old saying?
Motivation.
Don't attribute to malice that which can be explained by stupidity or greed. Like people will do things because they're just not doing the right thing, not because they're trying to be mean. But anyway, So that's polio vaccine. But you know what? We've got a new vaccine technology. Ooh. And this is very cool. And when I say new, it's at least 30 years old. So it's not new. And the new Pfizer vaccine, for example, is an mRNA vaccine. And I'm sure people have heard that. There has been a lot of confusion around what that actually is and means, because it's one of these things where you're getting medical jargon hitting common speak and people remembering things like vaccine-induced polio.
Yeah.
Not to mention then the concerns that people have about, you just any medical intervention has a chance to cause problems, anaphylaxis or secondary infections, or, you didn't realize that a person was immunocompromised at the time. There's so many things. Tiny little chances of it happening. Terrible if it does happen to you, though, and you don't really care that it was a small chance at that point. But the mRNA vaccine, fantastic. The reason for that is mRNA stands for messenger ribonucleic acid. So we all know DNA. DNA is the thing that holds the code to our existence, and it's wrapped up in chromosomes, and it sits in our cell nucleus, all tightly protected. That's the whole double helix nature of it, is to keep it from degrading, because you don't have any active sites. But we have this very clever process inside of our bodies where we have an enzyme which will crack open the DNA, and some viruses can do this too, by the way. Talk about that in another episode, I suppose. But it'll crack it open, and then a bit of this RNA will sort of, transcribing RNA will fold onto it and then come off the DNA, and the DNA closes back up and stays nice and secured. Yeah, now, this RNA is half of DNA, and the other complementary half then is going to fit protein molecules. Mm-hmm. And we get this RNA, it leaves the nucleus. So it's a one-way door. It pops out as little fragments called messenger RNA. Uh-huh. And out in the cytoplasm of your cell, you've got these things called ribosomes, which, I don't know if you remember when you're back in high school, maybe you would have made drawn a diagram, and you've got these things called organelles, and you've got the mitochondria, and you've got one of the organelles is this ribosome, which is itself a combination of RNA and some various proteins and enzymes and so forth. Mm-hmm. And it goes in there, and this messenger then creates whatever protein it is that your body is trying to create. Usually it's some sort of a hormone or some other sort of messenger that will signal, insulin production or something. Yeah. And so if you get then a messenger RNA that you encode in the lab to produce, say, the spike protein of the COVID virus, just the spike protein. So it's not a live virus. This would be considered a dead virus. It's actually even just a part of a dead virus. It's just the spike protein that on the outside. So you make this RNA which will create that spike protein, and you inject it into someone, and it goes into this cell. It can't get into the nucleus. The nucleus is a closed barrier. The mRNA has got no capacity to go in. It's a one-way door that it goes out. It goes in there, and then your body creates the spike proteins, which you're then release in your blood, and then your immune system goes, aha, this is not right. Yeah. And you have an immune response, which is where most of your side effects come from. The side effect is not the vaccine. The vaccine is very small, and your kidneys and liver deal with it, no worries. It's actually your own immune response to finding something wrong, which can give some people just maybe aches and pains, or some people don't even notice it. But other people will have a little fever, or will actually get things like, congestion and coughs and runny noses, and or a myocarditis, which sounds scary, but you actually get myocarditis as a side effect of many colds and flus and things as well. It's part of your immune response as well. Yeah. So, you get that, but what that means now is you now have natural immunity to any virus recognizable by spike proteins on the outside. And I say it like that because, as we know with like Omicron, and there is mutation. And so some of that mutation occurs in the spike proteins, which makes them harder to recognize, which has made the vaccine that was produced for the initial coronavirus is less effective against the Omicron because Omicron itself has changed. The government has not changed its story about the vaccine. The vaccine that we've taken now is as effective as the trials suggest, like 94%, whatever, against the original coronavirus. It has since mutated a bit, and now I don't know what I can't keep up with the numbers now. You are better off with the vaccine because you do have something. If you've never been vaccinated, you have zero natural immunity.
Yeah.
Like none. You will become sick from it. That's just the way it works. Some people more so than others.
Yeah.
And that's just luck of the draw there as opposed to any other thing. So this mRNA vaccine, though, the first published paper for mRNA as a vaccine vector, 1990. In 1992, they found a way of delivering it into cells, and all the way up to, and I was reading this paper, 2018. So this is, this mRNA vaccine was not developed in response to coronavirus.
No.
It was being developed because of the problems you have with things like polio. The fact that with mRNA, you can program it to whatever you like. You don't have to try and tease out a less deadly form, but it's still recognizable. That's a hard, slow process. This one here, you just go, you know what? This little part of it is recognizable. We'll just encode an mRNA for that and stick it in someone. Yeah. So you can expect vaccines to a lot of viruses now a lot quicker to make. Yeah. So this is a 2018. You can go on to nature.com. mRNA vaccines, a new era in vaccinology. January 12, 2018. It's a review article which talks all about the history and what the basic... And, it uses all sorts of words that are very difficult to understand, but it goes through like the history from 1990 and then 1992 and so forth, and even get some pictures here showing bits I had to look up. Every little bit you have to look up and go, endosomes... what's peptide MHC presentation? Interesting. But if you do look all of that stuff up, then you'll, I guess, learn about it, won't you?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's very interesting. So the interesting point here in this movie that's a bit wrong, they modified a measles virus because measles are highly contagious. So it's a good carrier for whatever their message was for being vaccinated against cancer.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's possible. It's not really possible. Cancer is so different. There are so many different things with cancer. But the interesting thing about it, of course, measles is not a retrovirus. It cannot alter your DNA.
Yep.
So the only way these dark seekers could have been created is through a retrovirus, which could modify DNA. The only thing that this measles vaccination would have done would be it would stimulate an immune response, and then it would be destroyed by that immune response, and then people would be vaccinated against cancer. But obviously, if you took something like HIV, or herpes, they actually get themselves into your DNA. Once you're infected with herpes, you can only be cured of it by destroying the cells that have been infected, or by using something like CRISPR gene editing to go through individually and modify or switch off each cell that's been affected. So maybe they should have said it, instead of measles, they should have said HIV. That would have been a good twist, because that would have immediately made you go, ooh, don't play with that. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
Which it is. But there you go. So that's my brief rundown of vaccines. And Edward Jenner, who it was a different time where you could just experiment on the 8-year-old son of the gardener. Like, hey, gardener, bring your son over here. Yeah, what are you going to do? I'm going to stick this pussy needle in his arm.
All right. Am I still getting paid on Friday?
Why are you doing that? Here's $10. Here's a pound. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Oh, okay, I guess so.
Yeah, I've got another 3 out the back anyway.
Anyway, it's Edward Jenner. He has been named...
named and shamed on spacebrains.
Well, he's been named and shamed on spacebrains, but he's been named as one of the most important contributors to scientific knowledge. And the single person who saved the most lives in history or something. He was quite happy.
Did he bring the light out of the darkness?
Well, he was quite happy about the fact that the expedition into the Americas was benefiting from being completely immunized from smallpox. We know what happened there though, with smallpox in the Americas.
Yes.
Because when you're immune to it, but they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, actually, I spoke about biological warfare in a previous episode.
You did. So that's a similar thing, yeah.
It's a pretty grim thing. We humans are capable of the most awful things.
Yes,
and wonderful life-saving things too.
Well, that's really interesting. What did you think about Surrey's deep dive on the science of iamlegend, taking it apart and going down that path? Okay, well, that brings us to the end of tonight's episode. We will roll into next week's episode, which will be based on the film
The Osiris Child by Shane Abbas.
Yeah, we're going back to another Abyss film.
Yes, you'll know that he's an Australian. He filmed Infinity in Sydney warehouse for like $50 and a promise of a Macca's meal or something like that. Very impressive. We would love to try and get in touch with him. And we've sort of tried, but,
We'll try again.
We'll try again.
Yeah. Anyway, Daniel McPherson starred in that film, and he's also in this film. Reusing the actors.
Infinity was a wonderful film.
It was a really great
You should definitely go
sci-fi.
see that one.
Yeah, so I look forward to sitting down and chatting to you, Surrey, about the Osiris Child.
Osiris, like the god.
Osiris Child.
It's I nearly said a Greek god. And then I was going to correct myself, say Hebrew god, but none of that would work, would it? Really?
No.
It's the Egyptian god, Osiris.
Oh, there we go. Osiris.
Yes.
Osiris Child. Okay, well, go check it out. It's available online, and we'll see you next time on Spacebrains.
See ya.